Greetings everyone, a very warm welcome and evening to you all. Our arranged workshop today bears the topic the Model UN Conference 360 Overview. We hope to reach out to the UN enthusiasts and hope everyone else on this special day when the UN was formed back in the 1945. This year, the UN bears the theme of recovering better for an equitable future. Moving forward, what better day to get to know the UN better? Let me introduce our special guest, Isha Bhusal, a fourth-year law student from the National College of Nepal. She is a prominent Model UN trainer in the international arena, and today she will be conducting our workshop separated into segments to learn about the different bodies of the UN and the Model UN and the rules of procedure. So I will be handing the floor to Isha now. And before that, if you have any questions, we'll try our best to have an interactive session. So if you have any questions, please type the questions below in the chat box and we'll try to take them in the gap. Thank you so much, and I'll be giving the floor to Isha now.
Hello everyone, am I audible? Okay, so today I'll be giving you a brief introduction to MUN and what happens in MUN, the ROPs and everything. So this would be just a superficial information. Once you do MUN more, you will get to understand it. So this is just a theoretical knowledge. So until and unless you put it to practice completely, you'll just be getting like 60% of it, let's say. So I'll be sharing my screen and I'll be sharing you a PowerPoint presentation. Is my screen visible? Okay. So let me get my phone ready as well for the chat if you have any question. Okay, so I'll be starting. So what is Model United Nation? Before we get into Model United Nations, let's first start with me. Who am I? So I'm Isha. I am from Nepal. I'm from National Law College and I'm a fourth-year law student. I've always been interested in UN and law and everything with the sector diplomacy and everything since I was a kid. So I'm really happy that I'm pursuing this career as well. And I'm really happy to be here as well. So yeah, so this is me. So what is Model UN? So Model UN or Model United Nations or MUN is basically United Nations, but it's model. So it's a simulation of United Nations, simulation of whatever happens in United Nations, we do it here. Since we cannot be there, we do it here. That's it. That is MUN. And so the thing is, there are many rules that you follow. In UN as well, everybody needs to be, there's a rule book, there's a code of conduct, there's a mandate, we have charter, right? So similarly, each and every MUN has its own charter. So there are various rules of procedure. Like there is UNA USA, there is UN for MUN. So each and every one of them have different rules. So today I will just be focusing on UNA USA, that is the competitive side of MUN. So what happens is UN for MUN, that ROP, that rules of procedure is mostly about what exactly goes in UN, that happens here. But when it comes to UNA USA ROP, we are following it in such a way that it is more competitive. All the delegates are more interested in it and all the delegates are involved. So today, UNA USA MUN shall be studying or learning, let's say, not studying per se, but yeah. Okay, so I guess each and every one of us know over here what United Nations is. It is an international organization that's majorly focused to maintain peace and security in the world. So why am I discussing about United Nations before telling or going more into MUN? So what is, as I said before, MUN is basically a simulation of all these. It's basically a simulation. That's why I'm just giving you a brief introduction to what the 6 major organs of UN is. So first of all, we have General Assembly. General Assembly is nothing. It's exactly what its name suggests. It's a General Assembly where all the member states, there are 193 member states right now. We have 2 observer states, that is Palestine and Holy See, or more popularly, we know it as Vatican City. So 193 member states, all of them are the member of United States, right? United Nations, right? So they take part in the General Assembly. They discuss stuff. What is important? Financial stuff, maybe like regional stuff, what more to do, initiatives, maybe. So every general stuff, every superficial stuff, it gets discussed in the General Assembly. So then we have the Security Council. Security Council is arguably the most powerful organization in the whole world. everything it says is binding. Given the fact that there are only 15 members in the Security Council, out of which 5 of them are permanent, everything Security Council says is binding. So General Assembly as well comes up with resolutions like this should be done, that should be done, that initiative should be given, that financial status should be made. General Assembly also gives its resolutions, right? But it is not binding. It is just suggestive or persuasive to a nation. But when Security Council says something, then all the nations must follow it. Therefore, Security Council is the most powerful organ in the world itself, not just the UN. So then we have ECOSOC, Economic and Social Council. As its name suggests, it looks after economic and social stuffs. Then we have ICJ. So ICJ is International Court of Justice. So there are 193 members in United Nations, right? So at some point, they are bound to clash with each other. So ICJ is there for that. ICJ is also the only organ of United Nations that is not located, that headquarter is not located in New York. Its headquarter is located in Hague, Netherlands. So yeah, so ICJ just solves disputes between two nations. So it's basically a court. It's a court where two nations go as like plaintiff and defendants. They give their stances and ICJ helps them solve it. And the other thing that ICJ can do is Security Council can ask ICJ for advisory opinion, because Security Council's main objective is peace and security. So let me give you a few examples of what Security Council has done. So right now in Myanmar, there is like this protest and Rohingya Muslims and everything is going on, right? So Security Council is involved in that as well. When we had the Rwanda genocide, Security Council was involved and it sent peacekeeping force. So, when legal aspects come, when international humanitarian law or human rights is involved, what does Security Council do? It asks ICJ for its legal opinion. So ICJ gives its legal opinion in that. Then we have the Secretariat. Secretariat is basically the executive body of United Nations. So there are thousands of employees there. Secretary General is the head of Secretariat. So all the people there, or all the organizations under the Secretariat, they work for the motive of United Nations. Then we have the Trusteeship Council. Trusteeship Council is not really a part of UN right now. It's one of the organs of UN, but it is not in function. It has not been in function since 1994. Yeah, it has not been in function since 1994 because Trusteeship Council's main objective was to provide nations with independency, to free them from their British colony or be it French colonies, to free it from there. So therefore, in 1994, when every nation in the world got its independence, Trusteeship Council does not have any much function there. So these are the 6 major organs of United Nations. So what happens in MUN? Sometimes we do Security Council, UNSC we do. Sometimes the bodies under Secretariat, we have refugee, we have UNODC, the drugs, organized crime and drugs. We have those committees, right? So, but mostly what happens is in Model UN, we follow the specialized agency. So what is specialized agencies? They're basically an independent body who are in contract with UN in such a way that they do their own jobs, but under the United Nations motives. So UN women, they are all for gender equality, empowerment of women and everything, right? But what happens is they have signed a special contract with the United Nations to work for the motive of United Nations. There are many agencies as such, UN Women is there, UNESCO is there for scientific cultural organization, ILO is there, ILO is for labor organization. I guess we are all familiar with WHO and World Health Organization by this point, in this year, let's say, because of COVID pandemic and everything. Then we have International Monetary Fund. It is basically, IMF basically regulates all the financial transactions and everything that happens in the world. Then we have GFAD, that is basically for agriculture and rural development. So these specialized agencies, I have only listed 6 of them here. Most common are I've listed the most common Model UN committees over here. So these are the specialized agencies that Model UN mostly looks after, or Model UN has its committee for. So yeah, so now let us get into why MUN. So before I told you what MUN is, right? Basically, it's a simulation of the United Nations. So why should you do MUN? I think this is a really important question that needs to be discussed and that you need to ask yourself. I have been doing MUN for like the past 5 or 6 years, and I did MUN mostly because I wanted to know more about the world. So these are all the things that I have listed why MUN is according to my own experience. Know more about the world, right? Knowledge about the world. Basically, you're going to be talking on international topic. You're going to be given a country. You're going to know more about the world. You're going to be more aware about what's happening in this world. Basically, let's say when you go to an MUN, for example, let's say the committee is UNHCR, the Council for Refugees, and then the topic is technologies for refugees, let's say. So what happens is, if you're given a country, let's say Nicaragua, even though your nation might not have refugees, you will know about other nations and you will know about the nation Nicaragua and what it has done. Let's say Myanmar, you'll be getting more knowledge on the Rohingya Muslims. Let's say Bangladesh itself, you'll be getting more knowledge on the Rohingya Muslims and what is happening in the world. So it makes you more aware about the world as a whole. Confidence building. I swear to God, like I would not have been able to talk, let's say virtually or even live like this if I had not gone to an MUN or if I had not been a delegate or like did an MUN as such. Because in the first MUN, I just kept silent. I just gave my speech and I was just like, zip it. From the next time, I started speaking up, and now look, I'm a public speaker and I'm one of the most prominent trainers in Nepal right now. So yeah, that's there, flaunting my own horn, but yeah. Then we have analytical skills. So what happens is, MUN is basically a problem solving. Whatever the agenda is given, whatever the topic of your committee is, that is a problem, right? So you have to solve it. How are you going to solve it? You have to analyze it. You cannot just look at the MUN is not just like it's out of the book, it's out of the textbook stuff. You cannot look at your laws, or you cannot just be inside your country policy and say like, okay, so this then this. No, you have to be quick, you have to think. There are crises that happens at times. It's not like one by one paperwork or one by one topics are not going to come to you. It's like the world scenario right now, right? So you have to be very quick. You have to understand the situation and you have to deliberate anything analytically. Then we have diplomacy. MUN is all about diplomacy, everything. Why do you think all now 193 nations have lived together without starting the World War III? Because United Nations formed after World War I, right? So why do you think it has been like there has been no World War III, even though we get threats sometimes? Basically, diplomacy. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. That is what MUN is as well. You have to be diplomatic with other nations, other people, other delegates. You have to talk with them. You have to follow your country policy in such a way that you guys can work together hand in hand. That is what MUN is all about. And this skills also applies in your real life when you have to negotiate with your problematic, let's say, teachers or parents, or even your like careers or your boss or anything. Negotiation, again, another one of the best skills that you can learn from an MUN. It's like compromises there, but make sure that you get the biggest piece. Again, that is very much applicable in real life, and MUN really teaches you how to negotiate. Then we have public speaking. Obviously, it's confidence building and public speaking, those skills go hand in hand. If you're not confident, then you will not be able to speak in public properly. And MUN really does define your public speaking skills. And lastly, we have networking. Like, honestly, I am here because of MUN. I am here I am here in this program because of MUN. If I had not done MUN, if I had not trained enough myself for MUN, then I would not be here. You would not know me. Maybe you would see me somewhere, let's say Facebook or something, and like people you may know stuff, but I would have never been able to be here. So networking. See, now I know so many of you. Like, I know more than 30 of you over here, and I'm building my network, and so are you. And this is like internationally. I'm not just limited in Nepal. You're not just limited in Bangladesh. We are connecting internationally. So these are just some of the reasons you should do MUN, and you need to find your own reason by doing MUN. So before we jump into ROPs and everything, let us discuss about some MUN terminology. So right now, I'm not just going to be speaking on a virtual basis, but I'm going to be speaking on, like, if you ever do a live MUN, then it would help you. Such things like committee hall and like, then we have this placard. So I'll just be explaining what those are as well. If you have not done MUN, then this would be really helpful. So who is a delegate? Delegate is basically a person in an MUN who is representing a particular country and is following that country's point of view and like everything. So delegate is a person who is working, who is using his skill, his or their skill, who is using their skill to solve a particular problem, by becoming a country. So delegate's main motive is to find a solution, that is the draft resolution at the end, which I shall be talking about later. So that's delegate. If you are a delegate, you represent a country, you speak on behalf of your country, you solve the problem on behalf of your country. There is no you. Like I, Isha, no. Let's say if I am if I have been allocated as a delegate of United States, I am not Isha. I'm not Isha from Nepal. I'm not Isha, the law student. I am an ambassador from United States who is here to solve a particular problem. So my personal point of view are out of the bag. My point of view, United States point of view. Even if personally I don't agree with it, nobody cares about that. I am United States and I am representing the country. So that is who a delegate is. Then we have the dais members. Dais members are basically the moderator of a committee session. So what happens is in UNA USA, the ROP that we will be learning today, dais members regulate the committee. They are the ones who say how the committee should be going. Let's say, for example, if a motion is being voted on and everything, like you'll be more clear about the role of a dais when we go further. But just remember, the dais is a moderator of a committee. Everything has to be approved by them before moving forward. Especially in UNA USA ROP, if you're doing UN for MUN ROP, then dais have a very invisible role. They are just there so that they can moderate the committee in such a way that no delegates fight with each other or all the delegates are following the ROP or not. But when it comes to UNA for UNA USA ROP, then the dais members are very much active in the committee session. So yeah, basically, so what happens is in actual UN, over here in MUN, we do like chair, co-chair, director, or let's say president, vice president, and director. We have such rules, right? But what happens in real United Nations is, even though I am the president, I am a delegate of a particular country. So it's a rotation. For this month, let's say, delegate of UK is the president. So the next month, maybe it's Guatemala, or let's say the next month, it's the delegate of Nepal who is the president. So it rotates. The chair, the position of a chair, co-chair, and the director in actual UN, it rotates according to the nations. However, in MUN, we do not assign any nation to the dais members. They're just dais members. They're just chair, co-chair, and everything, right? So placard. So basically a placard, okay, I'll send you a picture later on of what a placard looks like, but it's basically a card that you put in front of yourself. Placard is your recognition, basically. If you raise your placard, for example, let's say, this is my placard, right? If it is raised down, if it is put down, it has my country's name on it. Let's say United Nations, right? So I'm sorry, United States. So let's say if it is put down, that means I'm not recognized. Is my screen still visible? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Is my video stuck?
Yes, it's stopped, but we can hear you. You can turn off your video and continue with the workshop. It's fine.
So can the host share the screen from their side? Because my electricity just went out.
Sure, just give me a second. I'll be sharing it.
Okay.
Sharing it in a moment.
I'm really sorry for the interruption.
It's fine. No problem. I am sharing the screen. Um, is it visible, Isha?
Yeah, yep.
All right.
Okay, so where were we? We were at placard, right? So if the placard, it's the name in it, if it is down, that means you're not recognized or you're not active in the session. Let's say if somebody proposes a motion and you raise your placard, that means you're active in the session, you agree with whatever the delegate is saying, or you are voting on it. So placard is your identity, placard is your recognition. So when you raise your placard, until and unless the dais members, the chair, the co-chair, or anyone in front who is in front of you, if they do not recognize you, then you're not allowed to speak. Regardless, the placard is your recognition in the committee session. So committee hall, I think committee hall is basically, you understand what a committee hall is, but I still kept it over there because in what happens in Model UN is a committee hall is always shaped in either a U format or a V format. So it is done as such because um, so that everybody can see each other. So the dais members are always in the front of either the U or the V. So when you're in a U format, each and everyone can see each and every one of you. Therefore, the committee hall in a MUN is basically put in such a way. So yeah, then we have the background guide. So background guide, if you're a delegate, then you're given a guide before your MUN. Basically, what happens is the topic, the committee, everything is written in the background guide. So it's basically a study guide for you to know more about the agenda and more about the committee that you are in an MUN. So background guide is usually prepared by either the organization, like organizers of an MUN, or the dais members. It depends. So rules of procedures will be following that. Basically, when we talk about rule of procedure, it is the constitution of an MUN. It's just that. It's the constitution of an MUN. Each and everyone, from the organizers to the dais members to the delegates, to each and everyone, volunteers, press members, everyone must follow whatever has been written in the rules of procedure. So quorum is basically the least number of people you need for an MUN to proceed. So what happens is usually 2/3 members is necessary. However, in some situations, simple majority is also okay. I'll be explaining in which situation what is needed in the following slides. So now we have rules of procedure. Next slide. Okay, so rules of procedures always starts. Okay, so the as I said before, rules of procedure is the constitution of an MUN, right? So right now I'll be telling you the flow of how an MUN goes. There are many rules, like about how a delegate should dress up, and like what a delegate must be wearing. Like it should be always be formal. Like it's better if you have something to denote your country as well. So those are all there. But right now we'll just be focusing on the rules of procedure about how a committee session runs. So the next slide. So first of all, always the committee session starts with a roll call. Why is a roll call done? So that we can figure out the quorum. Quorum for the committee, for the voting procedures and everything that is to come in the future, right? So when the roll call happens is the dais members will be calling out your name. Your name, as in whenever I say your name, is your country's name. You are not you are your country, as I explained before, right? So the dais members will be calling out the delegates' countries, right? So it will be alphabetically. So when, let's say, first of all, let's say Afghanistan, the nation is Afghanistan, right? So the delegate of Afghanistan will raise a placard and say either present and voting or just present. The difference between them is very simple, but you will be getting more about, like you'll understand the difference more when we talk about the final voting procedures. But right now, just understand that you have two options. You can either say present and voting, or you can say present. So if you say present and voting at the beginning, you cannot change your voting stance to present at the end. So just keep that in your mind. So that's it. When your country's name is called, present or present and voting. Next slide. Then we have setting the agenda. So what happens is if your MUN is like, let's say 2 or 3 days, then usually there's only one agenda given. But let's say sometimes the MUNs, they run for like a week or so. So in those times, there are either like 2 or 3 agendas given for a committee. So what happens during those scenarios is, before you start, you have to set the agenda. Let's say agenda 1, agenda 2, or agenda 3. If there are 3 agendas, or if there are 2 agendas, you have to set the agenda. If there is only one, then it's not necessary to set the agenda per se, but it depends upon what kind of dais you have. If the dais member says that, yes, we have to follow everything according to the ROP, you have to set the agenda, even if there is one agenda, then yes, one of the delegate must raise their placard and start the committee session by setting the agenda. So everything that you do in an MUN, or every thing that you say in an MUN, needs to be in such a way that it follows a particular format, as I've said before as well, right? So everything that you speak in an MUN is like, if you're doing it for the committee, like let's say setting the agenda, or like setting the moderated caucus or unmoderated caucus, there needs to be a particular format about how you speak or how you set it. That is called motions. Motions is for the committee session. Motions is raised when you want to move the committee session forward. So here you are raising a motion to set the agenda. How do you raise it? You say the delegate of X country. I am USA, so I will be saying the delegate of United States of America would like to raise a motion to discuss the X agenda. Let's say technology for refugees before X agendas, education for refugees. So what happens is, the importance to the agenda technology more than the agenda of education. In this scenario, I'm just giving an example. You can do vice versa as well. It depends upon what kind of agenda you have and the necessity or the priority of that you should keep. So yeah, so you raise a motion to set the agenda. That's there. The next slide. Then we have the GSL. So what happens is, when you raise an agenda, then the committee goes into a voting session. So this time the quorum, or if the committee wants to approve of the agenda, it should be simple majority, 50% plus 1. So again, the dais members will ask, delegates in favor of the motion, please raise your placard. If you are in favor, then you raise it. If you're not in favor, then you put it down. And when the dais members ask, if you're not in favor, raise. Then, if 50% plus 1, if 50% plus 1 delegates have raised their placards and recognized their votes, that means the motion passes and we move forward. If the motion does not pass, then it will be repeated by some other delegate member who might have a different motion, right? So after we set the agenda, the MUN always has a general speakers list. So general speakers list is basically whatever your country's stance is with regards to the given agenda, you speak about that. You talk about that. That is basically general speakers list. So again, everything that you want to start in the committee session, you have to vote upon it. You have to raise a motion for it. So even when you want to start a general speakers list is default in every MUN. It needs to be there. If there is no general speakers list, then the committee ends. Like, there is no committee session that happens after if the general speakers list has ended. So even if there's only one member, one delegate at the end of the list, they need to be there. Because if they are not there, the committee session simply ends. So if you want to raise a motion for the general speakers list, you say the delegate of X country, if you raise the motion, your country would like to raise a motion to start the GSL, where each individual gets particular seconds. So usually the default time for GSL is 90 seconds. But if you feel like looking at your committee, if you feel like the general speakers list time should be less, then you can do that as well. One thing, delegates, that you need to everyone needs to remember is individual speaking time should always be in seconds, never minutes. Because like we can say 60 seconds is 1 minute, right? 90 seconds is 1.5 minutes. We know that. However, it is your individual speaking time. Therefore, it must always be in seconds. But when it comes to the total time period, it should always be in minutes, no matter what. Now, why doesn't general speakers list have a total time period? As I said, GSL does not end. GSL continues until and unless the committee continues. So yeah, so GSL is there. So what happens is, when you're speaking in GSL, you can suspend the GSL for a particular time period. So during that time period, you have the secondary speakers list, that is moderated caucus and unmoderated caucus. So the next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, so before we go to the moderated and unmoderated caucus, so what happens is in GSL, sometimes you have less to say. So if you have, let's say, 90 seconds is the default time period for you as an individual to speak, and you just speak for 60 seconds, let's say. So the remaining 30 seconds, you have the power to yield it. So what do? You can do three things. You can yield it to the chair, you can yield it to another delegate, or you can yield it to questions. So when the dais members ask delegate, you have 30 seconds left from your time. What do you want to do with it? So if you say yield it to the chair, that means if I'm the chair, I get that 30 seconds and I can do whatever I want with it. Usually, the chair moves on to the next delegate, but it is given to the dais members. If you yield it to another delegate, that means you're giving the additional 30 seconds to the next delegate. So GSL is a list, as its name suggests, general speakers list, right? So let's say if I am the delegate and I am yielding my time to another delegate, and I am delegate of USA, I'm yielding my time to delegate of UK, that means the delegate of UK gets my 30 seconds. However, the chair shall ask the next delegate if they want to accept it or not, and it is upon the next delegate about what they want to do with it. And the final one, or the one that I as a trainer would suggest you to take it, is to yield it to questions. So what happens is, in the remaining 30 seconds, the chair shall ask anyone, like let's say if there is any point of information. We shall be learning more about the points later and you'll understand it more. But that means if you yield it to the question, if anybody asks you a question, you can answer it in your given time period. So these are the three things that you can do if you have remaining time period from your GSL. However, let's say, if you do not have any remaining time, then you do not have to yield it, of course. But always, if you have remaining time in GSL, I as a trainer personally would suggest you to yield it to the question instead of yielding your time to chair or the next delegate. So next slide. So yeah, so as I said before, GSL continues throughout this committee session, right? However, you can suspend it in between. To suspend the GSL, there are two things you can suspend it by. It's either moderated caucus or unmoderated caucus. So let us talk about moderated caucus first. Moderated caucus is just a formal debate session. So each moderated caucus has a particular topic and you discuss upon that topic one by one. So in UNA USA, it is specially called moderated caucus because the dais members will be moderating it. The dais members shall be listing the delegate's name who shall be speaking. Obviously, you have to raise your placard if you want to speak and if you want to be recognized. So that is there. Remember placard. However, in virtual session, you raise your hand or you do some symbols or whatever the dais members say to you to do. So moderated caucus, in moderated caucus, like let's say, there's an agenda, right? Technologies for refugees. I'm using technology for refugee because I just chaired an event like last week on this, so I have more knowledge on technology for refugees. So I'm just using this as an example. So technologies for refugees is such a vague term. There's so many things that comes under it, right? There are problems for it. There are like solutions that you can find out. Let's say there's so many things you can discuss upon it. There's like right to privacy thing. There's cybercrime and everything, right? So all of these topics need to be discussed, and they are discussed in moderated caucus. So what happens here is you decide a subtopic and you raise it in the committee session. A delegate can raise it. Whoever, if you have a topic, just raise it. Be confident and raise the topic. If it passes, it passes. If it does not pass, then it's a missed opportunity. So if you have a topic and you want to raise it, you raise your placard when the dais members ask if you have any motions. Then you say the delegate of your country would like to suspend the GSL. As I said, GSL needs to get suspended. If you do not suspend the GSL, then the motion is not correct and the dais member will not accept it. So you have to suspend the GSL and raise a motion to start a moderated caucus on X topic. So X topic, whatever the subtopic that you have decided is fruitful for the committee session to come to a particular solution at the end, you suggest that topic. So unlike GSL, a moderated caucus always has a total time period, always, because it's a subtopic, right? So you only give, so the dais members will only give like a limited time period to discuss that topic. So you can say 10 minutes, 20 minutes, or like 30 minutes, right? So you can see that. How much time do you think it is necessary for it to be discussed? That much minute, where an individual gets, again, 30, 45, 60, 90 seconds, according to what you as a delegate think is necessary for the topic to be discussed, or like what you think as a delegate that other delegates would provide for the topic. So yeah, so that's moderated caucus. So again, the moderated caucus has a total time period. You need to have an individual time period as well, so that if the delegate speaks more than that, then their point will not be considered by the dais members and it would just go moot. So you have to speak within the time period. Now a question raises. Let's say the total time period for a moderated, the total time period in a moderated caucus for an individual speaker is 60 seconds, let's say. However, the delegate only spoke for 30 seconds. So in moderated caucuses, you cannot yield your time. It's only in GSL where you yield your time. In moderated caucus, if you have remaining time period, it is just ignored. Whoever is on the list after you gets recognized and they take over. And they have their individual 45 seconds. So no total time, no yielding of time in moderated caucus. So just remember that. So yeah, this is all about moderated caucus. Next slide. Now we have the unmoderated caucus. So in moderated caucus, the dais members were moderating it, right? They will be listing down the names of the delegates who speak. They shall be checking the time. If they are speaking, like, if they are speaking more, then there should be like, please sit down, delegates. The dais members will be saying that, right? However, in unmoderated caucus, the dais members must back off completely. You have to let the delegates go unmoderated. They can sit out from the space. They can like move around. In moderated caucus, you have to only sit in your space. If you can see the picture, in the previous picture, all the delegates were sitting in their own position, in their own delegated space. However, in unmoderated caucus, they're sitting on the floor, they're discussing the topic like that. So this is just an informal debate. So this is a time where you use your skill of diplomacy and negotiation. You go to other delegates, you say, hey, like, let's do this, let's do that. That's the time where you negotiate, you compromise, and everything that happens is an unmoderated caucus. It is the lobbying time. So lobbying means you are diplomatically calling delegates to your block to be with your group. Let's fight this together. So this is the time for lobbying. So again, if you want to start an unmoderated caucus, you have to raise a motion for it. So your nation and the total time period. Since this is an informal debate, you do not have individual time period. You need not have a topic as you don't need to have a topic as well. Remember, delegates, all the things that I've been saying right now, I'm sorry I'm calling you delegates, but remember, guys, so all the things that I'm telling right now, so GSL's motion, moderated caucus's motion, unmoderated caucus's motion, right? All of them needs to pass by 50% plus one majority. If your motion does not pass, then it gets cancelled. So you either switch back to GSL or the dais member will ask you to raise another motion. So it goes on like that. So then I think the next slide will explain it much more properly. So yeah, so the floor opens. When we say the floor opens, that means it's open for motions. That means you can raise your moderated caucus, unmoderated caucus during that time, right? So let's say the floor opens and you raise a topic for moderated caucus which passes. So then you discuss on a specific topic in a moderated caucus. Then it goes back to GSL, because if you remember, we were suspending the GSL. So we need to get back to GSL. Then again, after, let's say, 2-3 delegates speak on their topic for GSL, the floor opens again. Then you can raise an unmoderated caucus, or then you can raise a moderated caucus. Then again, GSL happens. So it goes like that. GSL always comes back because we are only suspending the time for a total time period of something for either moderated or unmoderated caucus. So the next slide. So working paper. So now we are moving towards before we were just talking about the oral, like for example, speaking stuffs, right? Now we are talking about the documentation. So what exactly is a working paper? Many DIAS members will not ask you to make a working paper as such. It depends upon your time and it depends upon your schedule and even MUNs as such, like how long it is. But working paper is basically, it's just pointers. There's no format or anything. You're just writing the pointers of whatever has been discussed in the committee session. So it's usually drafted in unmoderated caucus. If a DIAS member wants to see it, you just draft it in unmoderated caucus, because the best thing that you can do is listen. Listen what other delegates are saying. If their points is nice, you write it down. So why a working paper is why working paper is why we write with working paper is, it's also a informal draft of a draft resolution in a committee session. So you'll get more of this like in the next slide. But even if the DIAS members do not ask you to make a working paper, you as a delegate have a responsibility to listen to each and every delegate who are speaking and write it down. So that is one of the unsaid rules of procedures, let's say. It's unsaid because it's obviously we are not forcing you to listen or anything. It's your duty to do that. So the next slide. So now comes the draft resolution. This is what an MUN is done for usually, because draft resolution is basically a bunch of solutions. Everything that has been discussed in the committee session that proves like this is a solution to the topic, you write it in the draft resolution. It's the ultimate goal of a delegate. It's the ultimate goal of a committee session. It's the ultimate goal of a DIAS to come to a draft resolution that each and every delegates accept, or let's say at least 2/3 majority accept. So yeah, this is all the proposed solutions. So why did I say before working paper is an informal draft of a draft resolution? Is because if you have written everything down what the other delegates were speaking, then you already have a list of solutions. So it's easier for you to incorporate those in a draft resolution. And a draft resolution is called a draft resolution because in MUN you're still drafting, right? The final session is voting. So until and unless you vote on it and it passes, it should be called a draft resolution, or if it's easier for you, then a DR. So yeah, that's draft resolution. Let's move towards the next slide. It will be more clear about what a draft resolution looks like to you. So in the left-hand side, you can see that is what a draft resolution usually looks like. You have your name of the draft resolution. Then you have to which committee you are addressing. Therefore, in this case, it's the General Assembly's third committee. Then you have the sponsors, signatories, and the topic. The sponsors are exactly what their name suggests. They are sponsoring the resolution, and they are the ones who shall be looking after the resolution after it passes. The resolution after it passes, and make sure that it is followed. Financial aid, economic aid, everything is given by the sponsors most of the time. Sponsors have to agree to each and every topic or each and every solutions, or even a full stop or a comma. The sponsors have to agree to that because they are the author of the resolution. They cannot say like, that does not fall upon my country policy, I do not accept that. No, sponsors cannot say that. Sponsors have to accept each and everything that's written in the draft resolution. However, signatories, they have the right to, they need not accept each and every pointers of the solution. They have the right to reserve. Let's say out of 7 points, your country does not follow point number 5. So you can say, I agree to all the points, but not the point number 5. So signatories have that right. So before in a MUN, I have seen new delegates, they get really excited to be the sponsor because they can discuss the resolution, they can impress the DIAS members. I've seen that. However, remember that it might not be a correct move for your country, because you have to work according to your country's and your country's point of view and your country's stances. For example, you cannot be delegate of Saudi Arabia and promoting LGBTQ. You cannot do that. So even if you personally believe, even if you personally know that LGBTQ community should be free and they should be allowed to live properly, you as Saudi Arabia cannot. So your personal point of view does not matter, and hence you cannot sponsor such resolution because your country does not allow it. So that is, MUN is very tricky. So it happens like that, right? So coming back to draft resolution. So draft resolution is divided into two parts: preambulatory clauses and operative clauses. So preambulatory clauses is just basically, it is like addressing the problems. Like, we know we have these problems, we have tried to solve it before, this and that. That is where you address a problem. If you can see, reminding, reaffirming, notice, stressing, those parts are the preambulatory clauses. And on the internet, like I think I've listed it in another presentation, which I'll be sent to you probably. The preambulatory clauses, they need to start with particular terms. All the terms in resolution per se, but preambulatory clauses are more like, you're reaffirming it, you're noting, this has happened. What has happened, So those kind of terms need to be used. You can it's just a one Google search away. You can just search preambulatory clauses for a draft resolution, and you will find those words, and you will construct a sentence in such a way that it works with the word in front. Here you can see there are words like reminding, reaffirming, noting, and stressing. So those four are the preambulatory clauses. Remember, delegates, remember guys, a draft resolution is a single sentence. A draft resolution should only have a period at the end. If you have a period or a full stop in between, that means like everything that you write after that is scrapped out. Your draft resolution might be 2 pages, 1 page, or let's say 5 pages. Your draft resolution can be, but it is all one sentence. And this is because we separate everything with either a comma or a semicolon. Preambulatory clauses are always separated from a comma, like with a comma. See, if you can see in the presentation as well, it has been separated with a comma. And once it starts being separated with a semicolon, that means the operative clauses has started. Operative clauses are basically the solutions, and it uses words that suggest that something needs to be done now. Like you can see, encourages, urges, requests, calls upon, stresses, requests. Like those kind of words need to be used in operative clauses. And always remember, preambulatory clauses should be less than operative clauses, because you cannot have more problems than the solutions. You need to have more solutions, right? So operative clauses are solutions. They need to be always more than the preambulatory clauses. Similarly, the operative clauses are usually numbered as well, so it is easy for you to refer. So the last operative clause ends with a full stop instead of a semicolon. So that denotes that you have come to the end of the resolution. As I said before, if you have a full stop anywhere on top, then everything that you've written after the full stop is like cut down. So yeah, so this is like the basic thing of a DR. So it can be like in a committee session. Let's say if there are less number of delegates, then dais members usually prefer if there is only one resolution. But if there are like many delegates, and if you want to make 2 or more resolution with your group of countries, then you can as well. And it needs to be, so before going on voting procedures, what do chairs do is, if you're going on an advanced MUN, then chairs might not do this, or dais members might not do this. But if you're in an intermediate level or a beginner's level MUN, then dais members will check your DR, will suggest you to make changes to it so that you can learn in the process. So it's more like initial phases of MUN is just learning rather than competing. So yeah, so if your draft resolution is approved by the chair, then you can move towards your amendment session. So the thing is, I have not included the amendment session over here because it gets too mumbly. You're going to be really confused if I insert the amendment session in this right now, because it's a bit tricky. And it needs to be like the sponsors approving, disapproving, voting sessions and everything. But just remember, you can discuss upon your the draft resolutions can be discussed upon. It can be changed upon the approval of sponsors or not. Everything is done by voting procedures. So yeah, so once the DR has been discussed upon, questions have been asked to sponsor, the chairs have approved it, they have signed it, then we move towards the voting procedures. The next slide, please. The next slide. Okay. So remember when I said, okay, so before moving to the voting session, I got a question about, can you explain if an opposing country can sponsor one DR and how it usually works? So the thing is, it depends upon the context. It depends upon what kind of committee you are in. Let's say you are in Security Council, and let's say the committee is the Security Council, and your agenda is disarmament of DPRK, disarmament of North Korea, right? So in that situation, you cannot really come together, like USA and Russia can't really come together and sponsor a DR together. Because like there are two opposite blocks, they have two opposite mentality. Russia does not really want the disarmament of DPRK, but USA wants it. So you cannot come together and form it. That means you're not clear about your agenda, you're not clear about your country, right? But let's say the committee is WHO, and the topic that we are discussing is the pandemic, how to let's say third wave. I have no idea which wave we are at right now looking at the scenario, but let's say it's the fourth wave or third wave or whatever wave is coming, how to tackle with that. The committee is WHO, and the title and the topic is that, right? Even though USA is not really a part of WHO right now, let's say USA was also there. In that situation, USA can combine with Russia because both of them have the same motive right now. They have the motive to close down the pandemic, or let's say finish this pandemic and move forward, right? So in that situation, the opposing nations can come together and form a DR and sponsor a DR. So you get my point. The WHO is more like a hypothetical scenario right now because USA is no longer a part of WHO. I'm just simply giving an example with USA and Russia. So it depends upon the country. It depends upon the country. I mean, rather than the country, it's more about what committee session you are in, which committee you are in, and what is the agenda as such. I hope you're clear. Can you say if you're clear or not? Okay, thank you. So let's move on to voting session. So if you remember at the beginning, I said about the roll call, right? Two things, present and voting. So in this matter, that is the roll call that you said, present and voting, that applies to this particular thing as in the voting of a DR. So before everything that we voted on, it was 50% plus one, 50% plus one, right? So the simple majority was needed. But however, if you're voting for a draft resolution, you need 2/3 majority to pass. If the vote is less than 2/3 majority, then your resolution won't pass. So the voting stances, you'll be more clear by the table in the next slide, I believe. Can you show the next slide? Okay. So if you say present, then you have the right to say yes, no, abstain, or pass. So yes means obviously you are in favor of the draft resolution. No means you are against the draft resolution. Abstain means you have no stance. You're backing out completely. And pass means your turn skips for the first round of voting. In the second round of voting, you must vote no matter what. So if you say present, you have the right to say all these four, either one of these four, let's say. However, if you're saying present and voting, you do not have the right to abstain. You must vote on the draft resolution no matter what. It should be either yes or no. Because if you say pass, your turn will again come to you, right? So let's say when you say present and voting, you have to either support the draft resolution or go against the draft resolution. Remember, delegates, remember guys, I'm so sorry. Remember guys, if you're in the procedural matters, right? When you're voting on the motion for moderated or unmoderated caucus, everyone must vote. You do not have the right to. I'm sorry, was that a question?
I think one of the participants got unmuted.
Okay.
It's fine, you can carry on. Extremely sorry.
Okay. So yeah, so what was I saying? Oh yeah. So when you're raising motions and everything, right? So all of you must vote. every delegate must vote during that period. It's only you only have the right to abstain in the draft resolution. Everything else must be voted upon. Like, you must give your stance on that, either yes or no. But if you have only said present, then in the draft resolution only you have the right to abstain. So yeah, so if you say pass, your turn will come again and you must give your vote then. I hope this voting stance is clear. It's pretty clear, but like this, you'll understand this more if you have done it practically rather than theoretically. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So yeah, okay, this is just simply the flow of the session, how it goes. Whatever I've said till now, this is it. First of all, we have the roll call. Then we set the agenda. Then general speakers list. General speakers list can be suspended for the secondary speakers list, that is moderated caucus and unmoderated caucus. After this GSL moderated and unmod goes on, then we introduce the draft resolution at the end. Then we vote on the draft resolution. Then we adjourn the session. So this is how the committee session goes. So next slide. Okay, so before that, I'll just tell you the difference. Before we go towards the point, I'll just tell you the difference between suspension of a committee session and adjournment. When you say you're adjourning the committee session, that means you're completely ending it. You're not going to return back for it, right? But if you say you're suspending the committee session, it must be like suspending the committee session for lunch break or like for tea break or like till the next day. So you suspend it for a particular time being if you're suspending it. But if you're adjourning it, that means you're completely ending it. You can only adjourn the session after voting upon the draft resolution. Okay, so before I said about motions, like anything you do for the committee, it is motion. You're raising a motion to start GSL, unmoderated caucus, discuss the draft resolution, vote on the draft resolution. Everything that happens is for the committee session, right? So those are motions. However, points are for yourself. Points are for each and every delegate. So first of all, let me start with the simplest point. That's the third point I've kept. Point of personal privilege. It means that you have something personal to do. So you're asking the dais members to request, you're requesting it for yourself. So if you want to raise a point by not interrupting any speaker, you raise your placard, the dais members recognize you and ask why are you raising your placard? Then you can say point of personal privilege. So usually in an M event, point of personal privilege is used if you have to pick up a phone call, if you have to use the washroom, if you have to drink water, if you have to move from your spot in a moderated session, moderated and GSL, then you can use point of personal privilege. In an unmoderated caucus, it's not necessary because you obviously will have that privilege automatically. Then we have point of parliamentary inquiry. Basically, it means that you have a question for the dais and you want to ask it to them. You cannot just go up and say, Chair, I have this question, or you cannot just call upon them. No, they have to recognize you first. Then they will ask you what your point is or what do you raise your placard for, and then you say point of parliamentary inquiry, and then only you can ask questions to the dais members. So any question that you have, anything that you want to address or ask the dais members, you raise point of parliamentary inquiry. So remember in GSL, when I said you can yield your time to question. So if I am the delegate and I am yielding my time to questions, the remaining time in GSL, other delegates can raise point of information and ask me the question. So if you want to ask a question to a delegate, then you raise point of information. If it is for a dais, point of parliamentary inquiry. So that's the difference. Information is for delegates, parliamentary inquiry is for dais. Now we have point of order. So point of order is if anything goes against ROP, the constitution of an MEWIN, if anything goes against that, then you raise the point of order. This point of order can interrupt the speaker. If the speaker is speaking and let's say they say something out of ROP, then you can raise point of order and point it out. However, your point of order must be appropriate and it must be legit. You cannot just raise a point of order in like nonsense stuff. You can even raise a point of order against the dais members so that if they have made any mistake in following the ROP, you can call them out. Okay, we have a question. There's a point of parliamentary inquiry and point of order both for the dais. So point of order you can raise against either dais or another delegate as well. Whoever has gone against the order, whoever has gone against the ROP, you raise a point of order. But point of parliamentary inquiry is a question you want to ask the dais member. I hope that's clear. Can you reply if you're clear? Okay. So yeah, so these are the 4 points in an MUN. The next slide, please. So the delegate etiquette. So basically, I'm just listing this so that if you ever become in future, or if you're even like opting to be a dais member. I'm sorry, is anyone speaking? Okay. Okay, so delegate etiquette, right? So if you're even aspiring to be a dais member, then you should know what a delegate should do or not. So this is basically a simple, customary code of conduct for a delegate. So okay, let's go to the next slide. So yeah, obviously these are very basic stuff. So professionalism. You're not you are your country. You believe what your country believes in, even though it contrasts with your own personal belief. You should be very professional. The language is English because obviously it's a universal language. Everybody understands English. So do not speak, like especially in an international MUN, do not speak your own language. Like if I start speaking now in Nepali, then you're not going to get anything, right? And if you start speaking in Bengali, then I'm not going to get anything. So, we are speaking in English because it's a universal language. So MUN, always English. It's always English. So no personal pronouns. So this is a thing. This is a thing where you can actually raise a point of order. You cannot say I because you are not you. You're a nation, right? So you should say we, or like your nation's name. The United States believes that, or we believe that. You should use those terms. You cannot say I believe that. I am calling out this delegate. No. Say the delegate of USA is calling out the delegate of Afghanistan. You can say it like that. We can never use personal pronouns. No, he, she, no. So yeah, that's there. So yeah, so be respectful to both dais and delegates. If you're disrespectful to everyone, then the dais members have the complete power to just suspend you from the committee session and send you home. They have the power, so you should always be respectful because you're not talking to your friend. You're talking to another nation. You're not talking to your neighbor or anyone. No. You're talking to another nation. So everything that you do should be very much diplomatic. Even though it's just a simulation, it's more stricter. So yeah. Punctuality, you cannot be late because that shows a very bad reputation to your country. So you cannot be late. The time schedule are always given. The organizers will always give you the time schedule beforehand when they are providing the study guide or the background guide itself. So know your time, manage your time accordingly. Be early, never be late. So learning mindset. So yeah. So no matter what, no matter how many MUNs you have done, no matter whatever number of MUNs or I have chaired or anything as such, you're always learning new things. Always. It's because of the agenda maybe, or because of the people you meet, or even because of the organizers, whoever are the organizers, right? So you're always learning new things. So if you have that attitude when you come to an MUN, then that's really bad because it can be seen very much because everybody is acting diplomatically. And then if somebody is acting like an asshole, they are suspended either by the organizers or the dais members. So always come with a learning mindset and always remember that there is more to learn in this world rather than be arrogant. So yeah, that is there. So the next slide, please. So yeah, so this is basically an example of what I said for the language and everything. So if your country is Burkina Faso, then you say the delegate of Burkina Faso, or you can just say we. If you because you have a placard and your delegate is already people will already know which country's delegate you are of because of your placard, right? So you can simply use we. And if you want to be more formal, then you can say the delegate of Burkina Faso and stuff. So this is just an example. The next slide, please. So yeah, so this is basically a few examples for like beginners about how you can moderate your behavior or your language in an MUN. Instead of saying I think, you can say the delegate thinks. Speak about yourself in the third person. So that is the trick to it. Speak about yourself in the third person. So instead of I believe, the delegate believes, I would like to say, instead of that, you can be more formal and say the delegate would like to express their thoughts on. That sounds more formal, right? So if you're talking to another delegate, then just say their country's name, the delegate of this country. Refer to the other delegate with also the third pronoun, the third person point of view. He, she, no. Say, but you can say they. Do not say he or she. So instead of all the countries, it's better to say the international community because more formal again. So yeah, so this money is just another term that I've kept there. It's money sounds a bit informal than economic resources, right? So these are the terms that you need to make. You need to be a bit more mindful when you draft the resolution. Instead of writing United States of America has promised to provide money for the refugees. No, if you say the United States of America has proposed a financial solution to provide some economic resources to the refugees situated in Myanmar, then it sounds more formal. It sounds more readable as well. So you have to be very much careful about the language. The next slide, yes. Position paper, how to write one. So this is another I'm just like briefly stating about all the basic like MUN 101 kind of deal right now. So I'll just be simply saying what a position paper is. And remember everyone, if you're not writing a position paper, then still this will be helpful for you because this is what you can basically speak in your session, in your GSL. And so the next slide. Position paper is basically your position regarding the agenda that you've written down in a paper. Basically, it's just that. So there you'll be talking about the topic. The topic is agenda, basically. Then you'll be giving your country's stance and policies. You'll be saying what you've done in previously for the same issue. And you'll say what you've done, like what you're planning to do in the future, and then references, right? So basically, a good position paper is separated into 3 parts, or let's say 4 parts. Past, present, and like future, and like references. Above there is like the given. So I'm sorry, there's like coat of arms. You have to put coat of arms, and then you have to write your country's name. You have to write the agenda, right? So when I say past, that means like with regards to a particular agenda, what you have done in the past. If you've not done anything, then you can simply write in previously or like prior to the current scenario right now, the United States of America has not done anything with regards to the particular agenda. You can simply write that. But if you have done something in the past, then you need to write it down. Then we come to the present scenario. What are you doing right now? Maybe you're providing financial aid. Maybe you're just doing like advisory opinion and stuff. Like, you write whatever you've done in the current scenario. So the possible solutions are like in the future, what can you do? Maybe you can provide more financial aid. You can send help over there. You can raise awareness programs, anything. Anything that your country is capable of doing. By sitting in their country's point of view and their country's stance, you write those as a possible solutions. And references, you should always put references, always. So what are good references? I will tell you after this slide, I believe. Next slide, please. Okay, yeah, so things to remember when you're writing a position paper, all the dais members always check for plagiarism. Usually up to 10% plagiarism, dais members agree. Like 10% plagiarism is acceptable. However, if it's more than that, then we believe we have copied it from somewhere, so it completely gets rejected. And then you have no Wikipedia or private websites. You're a country, you have your government websites, use that. So position paper is not more than 2 pages. It's the ideal position paper is 1.5 page. So always try to limit yourself to that. Do not write like more than 2 pages. It's just tacky after that. So if you have more points, then just write pointers. Tuk. That's it. Do not write more than 2 pages because the dais members needs to check each and every one of you. Like sometimes there are 10 delegates, sometimes there are 200 delegates. So when we check it, it needs to be your position and your point of view needs to come straight forward to them. So if you start writing more than 2 pages, then it becomes tacky and it will not be understandable as well. So the easiest option is to write pointers. The next slide, please. Okay, so how to research will be directly directly, I mean, like in the position paper, I talked about like no private websites and everything, right? So this is how you research for an MUN. If you're an organizer, delegate, or even a DIAS members, this is how you research. Okay, the next slide. So basically, a country's info. Even if you're the organizer, you need to know which country you're allocating, because, as I said before, you need to be very updated, right? United States is no longer in WHO, so you cannot be an organizer and put USA in WHO's list. So countries info must be very much, everybody must be knowledgeable about the country's info. For delegates is easy because they are only given one country, right? But for organizers and for the DIAS members, it's difficult because they need to recognize and they need to know about all the countries that are present in the committee session. So in the country info, I've kept size and I've kept like head and allies, neighbors, like everything, location and all. It's because this is the basic information that is a must. This is an unsaid rule, but this is a must. Location, because obviously it depends upon the scenario as well, depends upon the committee sessions, but sometimes you need to relocate something somewhere. So in those situations, location is necessary, right? So the size, again, when we are talking about refugees or when we're talking about population and stuff, right? If your countries can accommodate the refugees, if your size is big enough, then maybe we can discuss upon that. So that's there. Neighbors, once again, because sometimes even though if two countries are neighbors, they might not have the same point of view or they might not see eye to eye. So, for block formation, neighbors is extremely necessary. Economy, of course, to see if a country is financially stable or not, we look at the economy. Head, because you are representing your country, you need to know your country's head. And even if the DIAS members and all, sometimes what happens is if you have given a speech so strongly against your nation, for example, let's say, as I said before, Saudi Arabia promoting LGBTQ, that means you're completely changing your country's point of view, right? So you need to represent the head of the nation and give a statement on that, if you have actually changed the rules or not. So in those scenarios, it would be really embarrassing if you do not know the head of your nation. So yeah. So allies, again. Before, somebody had asked a question about two opposing countries, right? So allies. Let's say in a particular scenario, can USA and Russia work hand in hand or not? So those things in your research according to the committee session and do it as such. So country info is very much necessary. The next slide, please. Country stance. So basically, position regarding the agenda, what previous action has been done, law within the country. Your municipal law is stronger. No international law can, reject your municipal law. Because, let's say, for example, again, I'm using the example of Saudi Arabia and everything, right? In UN Charter, right to equality have been mentioned. In ICCPR, ICESCR, many laws in the world, UDHR, everywhere, right to equality and self-determination has been mentioned, right? However, there are still many countries who do not follow that. Racism is still prominent, casteism is still prominent, homophobia is still prominent, right? Why is this? Because the international community cannot force any country to do something. Security Council can, but only in the situation of peace and security, nothing else. So that's why you need to know the law of your own country. The municipal law is always the strongest. So yeah, country stance is very much important. The next slide. Committee research. You should always research upon your committee. As I said before, your enemy in the real life world might be working together when it comes to a particular committee. So let's say here the committee is UN Women, right? UN Women is a specialized agency working on a contract with United Nations. So you need to know the mandate of UN Women separately. For example, in UN Women, you cannot be talking about disarming female police officers in United Nations. No, that does not come under UN. In UN, we are talking about gender equality and promoting equity and everything, right? So you need to know the mandate. Membership again. Example of WHO and United Nations, as I gave. United Nations backed out from UNHRC, Human Rights Committee, as well, a few years back. So you need to be mindful about which committee you're placed in and if your country actually belongs to that committee or not. So organization again, and powers and limitation. This all comes under the mandate of committee session. So you need to research on your committee as well. The next slide, please. So yeah, where to research? So this is where you research for your position paper, or if anybody is making something, if the dais are preparing the reports, or even for the background guide. If you're a delegate, then you can do your research on the background guides itself, because the organizers and the dais members, they do a very good job on detailing everything. So you can use help from that, right? So what the organizers and dais members can research from is the government official website. The most reliable material you will find is in your own government, because you are the country, right? You are the nation. So your research is the most valid. Like DPRK has been saying that in their websites and everything, that they do not have any COVID cases. Nobody knows for sure. Perhaps they do. But their nation is saying it. If you're the delegate of that nation and you're saying it, then your word is the most valid, because you are your country and you have done the research from your official website. And then we have UN websites. Like UN has authorized many websites as such. You can always, it's just one Google search away. Then we have previous voting, the history of topic on hand. So what happens is, usually in MUN, the topics that we discussed have mostly already been discussed in the United Nations. But in MUN, we just take it to the extra one step or extra level. So you can always research on the previous solutions, previous draft resolutions. If they are passed, then draft. If they are passed, then just resolutions. You can always look into that. So these are the places where you can research. However, if you want to do further research, then you can read research papers, you can read newspapers and cite them accordingly. So the next slide, please. So yeah, okay. So we have talked about everything. We have talked about what goes in an MUN. We have talked about your pre-research. We have talked about position paper, right? So the skills that you need if you want to be a good delegate is research. It's research. Literally, if you have the knowledge, then you can speak up on it. If you do not have the knowledge, then you can't bullshit your way through it, because the dais members already knows what your country stance is, what your country can do, what your country cannot do. So organizers know about it. So you cannot bullshit your way through an event. And even the other delegates research on their allies and their countries, right? So your research should be top notch. You should know everything about your nation and everything about the agenda as much as possible. And trust me when I say this, everything is always less. There's so much to learn and there's so much to research. Then public speaking. So what I personally believe is, if you have research, then you have the confidence to speak. So your public speaking skill will automatically increase. Given the fact that you might not be able to speak properly in your first or second MUN, from the third one, you're going to be the best. So keep on doing your research, keep on doing MUNs, and you will get there, trust me. Then we have team building. Obviously, you have to come with your allies, you have to build your blocks, you have to lobby with other people. So, it's all team building exercise and how well you work with other people as well. You cannot be a one-man army in an international community. So yeah. So writing, when I say writing, I'm talking about the position paper, the draft resolution, and the working paper as well. Even the working paper does not have any particular format, you still need to write, because working paper shows how much you have listened to other delegates. So yeah, that's working paper. Then debating, obviously. When I say debating, it's not like a particular, it's not a British parliamentary debate and stuff, but it's negotiation and diplomacy. That's what I mean by debating over here. So yeah, so if you do these 5 things, then you're going to be a very good delegate and a top-notch delegate. So all the best for that.